I said, I just listened to, I've heard the joke before I met you of the wildcatting joke that you have when you were in New Orleans.
Oh yeah.
But I just listened to it again right now and I was like, oh, yeah, I really enjoy that joke.
Thanks.
Oh, hi, you're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky few that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I used to work at a very popular and very busy comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So, let's eat! I'd like to welcome our guest, comic and actor Matt Braunger. Matt is an internationally touring comic and has done stand-up on every late-night talk show that you've ever heard of in the whole of the history of the world. He's been on Mad TV, Upload, Blackish, Chelsea Lately, Up All Night, Marvel's Agent Carter, iCarly, Fuller House, and so many more that we couldn't get into all of them right here. Go to his IMDb. After all of those aforementioned credits, he was poised to record an hour in early 2020, but all the clubs shut down. No idea why. As Matt put it, quote, "Luckily, my job went away just in time for me to be a stay-at-home dad, which I did for a year. During that time, stage comedy came back and I threw away much of the original hour for what we now have, which is Doug," end quote. Matt's new comedy special, Doug, that I referenced before, premieres October 6th, so it's already out in the world, and it was on a platform called Moment, which I will ask you about in a moment. This new collection of material is a deeply personal hour of insane hilarity named after a terrible dad bro type of person. Doug is Braunger's masterwork. That said, what got you into acting? How much do you love being a comic? What's different about this special than others? Because I want to get into did you take on a persona and make it Doug, or are you talking about that? Like, what's your
it's a little bit of a thing. I hung on it as a name because it ends with a big story about this guy named Doug, and then it all basically gets wrapped up in a bow on this little. It's basically like a reveal. It's almost like a magic trick.
Oh, okay.
At the very end, where I call.
No! Don't tell us. Don't tell us.
I won't. No,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't. Don't worry. But I got into acting when I was like a little kid. My parents took me to a lot of plays. I loved performance. I'm an only child. I've always been like a class clown. I always liked attention, so it was like a natural thing. And I got into stand-up in Chicago when I moved there after going to college in New York. And it was kind of one of those things I always thought about, never really figured out how, and I fell in with a bunch of people who were uniquely funny in their own way. So it was one of those things. That's how it happened. And I love being a comic, but it's it's different, and it's got its downside. But yeah, I mean, I love it more than I don't love it, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, but I want to reference something you've said in one of your specials. You said your parents never said no to your crazy dream of like wanting to get into this world, and you started as a young kid. So did you start professionally acting as like a little tyke?
No, I was in school plays, and then I was taking acting like classes and lessons through like junior high, and then I did all the big shows in high school. And no, I didn't. I think I got a voiceover job when I was like in high school once. I never really did that thing where I was living in Portland, Oregon. There really wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that sort of thing. And also my parents had full-time jobs. They couldn't do the thing of, okay, you're now in Actors Equity. You're going to be at the performance space doing whatever shows in Portland. I will just be your tutor. Or we'll hire one. Like, it's like, there was never where it was like, oh, I'm coming out of school. And that never crossed my mind. I never saw child actors and went, I want that life.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is, yeah, I don't know why. I've never really thought about it, because I definitely, if the opportunity would have come along, and those stories were like, this casting person's coming to town and they're auditioning people across the I would break my neck to go and get an audition, like anything. But luckily, nothing like that ever happened. So, yeah.
Okay, so you were exposed to it. What was the transition age where you were like, sort of like, okay, this is in my awareness. I know this is something that like is a job. What was the age where you were like, oh, I'm absolutely doing this job?
Well, it was late high school and then college and kind of like training to be an actor. But I remember I had the head of the theater department at my college, which was a very small college, but had a great theater department. He was like, I think you should do this postgraduate program that's Shakespeare intensive. And I remember being like, and it's like, yeah, it is the foundation of all modern theater, without a doubt, at least arguably so. But I was like, but I want to do other things. And I just see this. And I also was like, I don't want to saddle myself and my family with more debt here. I'm already coming out. You know what I mean? It was one of those things like, I can't put 2 and 2 together and make 4 in my head. I can't. So, I didn't do that, and I didn't go back to New York. I just decided over the summer, I talked to a friend of mine who I'd grown up with, and her parents were actors, and she kind of grew up in the field. She lives in Chicago, and there's like hundreds of black box theaters here doing really amazing work. And I kind of was like, oh, let me try that. And to be honest, a lot of that was just me being very scared of moving to Manhattan, because I had friends who lived there and were living in a box where the bathroom's down the hall. And I'm like, I can't. I just spent 4 years in a dorm. I can't. And so one of my best friends from childhood and I packed up and moved to Chicago together. And it was kind of a, futile exercise for me trying to break into the theater scene there. But I just started taking improv classes, and I made friends doing that, and just started doing open mics. But open mics is where I met the people that I still hang out with today, where it kind of was like, oh, that's my postgraduate thing. I always say, like, Portland, Oregon made me a person. Chicago made me a comedian, is the way I kind of put it.
Okay.
So,
And so was there a piece of you that when you started doing open mics, because I've heard a lot of comics say that the second they got on stage, even when they bombed, they were like, oh, this forever. Did that click for you?
I always say the worst thing that ever could have happened to me when I tried it, because I killed the first time.
You did?
And that's absolutely worst. Yeah, well, I showed up with a friend of mine who was a comic. It wasn't an open mic. And the host was like, we're short someone. Do you want to go up? Rob says you're really funny. And, and it all came out of Rob and I were both, he was kind of like we're still friends. He's a great guy, but he's definitely like a frat boy type. So we'd be riffing and he'd go, oh, I'm using that. And I'm like, no, but I said that.
Yeah.
And he's like, but you're not a comedian. I'm like, I am now. Like it was like, that's my joke. So we showed up together and the lady was like, do you want to go up? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, you get 2 free drinks. And I was like, it's a deal. And I went over to the bar and I just started writing out an idea. And I kind of just went up there. I had some half-baked crap, and then, because I was heavier and I had hair to my shoulders and a goatee. And so I had some joke of, God, so it's so stupid, but it's such a joke of that era where you go, I know what you're thinking. It's always that looking at me. It's always like, you think so-and-so and so-and-so had a baby. Mine was, boy, Christ the Lord has really let himself go. and I said, it's not my fault. I eat 1 slice of bread, it becomes 5. Like, that was my dumb joke. And that did well. And then a really drunk lady walked out and was like, pointed at me, went, woo, like for no reason. And I was like, look, leave the light on. Daddy will be home. Like, I started talking to her like we were dating and we were in like a big sex thing. Yeah. And people were cracking up. And I just rode that. But the thing is, I knew a lot of people in the audience. So then I was like, oh man, I got this stuff nailed. I got the blueprint. And then I go to an open mic after that and just ate it. It's just like one of those things you're like, but I was so...
Damn it.
No, none of... So it's that much more crushing. If you do it once and you eat, crap, yeah, sure, of course you do.
Yeah.
You don't have any sort of comfort on that stage at all. But yeah, so that's I basically started doing it almost on a dare.
And so did you find that as an actor made you more confident for auditions and other things? Were there fringe benefits of it?
Well, the one thing I always had going for me when I was young, when I first started doing plays, is I could improvise really well. And what I mean by that is there's no play you'll look at where it's like, you guys make this scene up, but things go wrong. Things go wrong in plays. I remember being in a one act in high school, and we had to wear all this like colonial, almost like these weird pants that snap on the side. And I had a thing where I fell over a chair or something, and I felt all the snaps just pop, like, and no one knew. But I'm like, I stood up and I'm just holding my pants, like with my hand. I'm pressing my hand to my leg as hard as I can. And then the other actor, the thing is like, have we reached a bargain? And he puts his hand out. And I was like, I said something like, before we seal the deal, my pants have come unsnapped. I must resnap. Like, I made it a big thing. And it got huge laugh because everyone's like, oh, his pants are about to fall down. He has to fix them, and then he could then end the scene. But it's like, I remember people in high school saying that, were like, I'm never afraid when Braunger's out there, because if something goes wrong, he's going to make it like work. Like, and it wasn't anything I would do I'd go for a joke. It was always like, it was like patching up a boat where like a hole would sprig, and you throw a line in that would explain, people come to the stage late. What's her name? Beanie. She's huge. She was in very, very popular right now. Very, very talented. She was in Booksmart. Beanie Fieldstein, is that her name?
I'm bad at this game.
She's Jonah Hill's sister.
Oh.
And you've seen her. She was in like Neighbors 2 and stuff. Like, she's always super funny and super great. But she starred in the revival of Hello, Dolly with Bette Midler on Broadway.
Holy shit.
And there's a scene where she gets on stage. I mean, talk about the tightrope 1,000 feet up. Like, that's, no net Broadway. Are you kidding me? So she's on stage with she's her and her beau, the guy that they fall in love. They're supposed to come out together. And I guess, if memory serves, either the guy had food poisoning, so he's either barfing or worse, whatever. And so she comes out and he's not there. He's, doing his thing. And she kind of did this thing where she just clasped her hands and she just kind of swayed to the music until like he made it out, and then they started the fucking routine. So I was like, I heard her talk about that on a podcast, and I was like, yeah, like I remember doing stuff like that where
wow.
Someone tripped backstage. It's like we had this big thing when I was in high school. The stage and the auditorium was big, and they put on big shows, like big musicals and stuff. And when you weren't on stage, you were basically in this holding area in the cafeteria, which is underneath, or like the next building over. And people would just be like, being in high school and BSing and go, what time? Oh my God, I'm on. And they'd run. So it's like,
yep.
There are times where you just like, I did it. Almost everyone did it. It just, things go wrong. They just go wrong with anything live. So anyway, long story long, when I was in improv, the compliment I got was like, oh, you come up with really interesting characters during scenes, which is a good compliment. But then when I started doing stand-up, I combined those two things, where it's like, oh, I'm going to tell stories, and I'm going to forget some of these stories. So I'll either I'll add a description that I didn't have before, and then that's kind of how I build material, where I write as I go. So
right as you go, meaning like in real time on stage, or you mean?
Yeah, I mean explaining like, say I a story about how when my wife and I drove 3,300 miles across the country with a 6-week-old during the pandemic. I met every kind of person, and we were in an electric car with California plates during an election year. And so you're very self-conscious.
Yeah.
And we never ran into any trouble, but once there was a guy in a beat-up pickup, and he got out, and like in that story I say, his belly got out before he did. Like, he had no shirt on. And then he had like one flip-flop. And I was kind of talking about how that in and of itself is so terrifying.
Yes.
Where there's something like, she doesn't pay attention to any of the rules. And like, when I would tell that story, sometimes I would go, I can imagine this guy doing this, or I can imagine him, or what happened to that flip-flop, so, and I've said a couple different versions of that just came to me like in the moment.
I get you.
And that's a great thing about stand-up. All it is, if you stick exactly to the material, sometimes you'll just get so. I'm convinced the reason why we do specials is not just because it's the norm and it's a way to make a little thing. It's also like, if I tell this story again or do this joke, I'm going to kill myself.
Yes.
I hate it so much. I hate it. Hope you like it. Sioux Falls or wherever you are, you know.
That's such a good, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, of course. Cause then it forces you to write a new hour, and writing an hour is an arduous, insane process. So
you kind of want to, you want to, there was a guy who, I remember we would occasionally, when I was in Chicago, do guest sets at Zanies, which is this tiny comedy club on the north side. One of the only ones around there. Now there's more, thankfully. But it's a great club, really awesome. It's one of those things that like it's so enclosed and built so well that like you can really kill hard there, which is nice. But I remember I opened for a guy, did a guest set for a guy, and he just did this polished routine about being in a relationship with his wife or whatever that just crushed. And then he got off stage and he was shaking next to the bar, and he was like, so how long have you been doing it? And he looked like someone who was just like, is the heroin here yet? Did someone bring, like he was, like he was
tweaking.
fiending.
Yeah.
And yes, tweaking. That's it, tweaking. But I realized looking back, he was tweaking because he's probably done that hour every at least 2-3 times a week for the last 10-15 years or longer. Where because that was. I came in with the last remnants of the guys from the 80s and, mostly 90s, but there was still that thing of, because it is when you have an hour that kills, you just do that hour, but it's just like you have to learn to break out because A, you're going to get sick of it, and B, you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that person who is just like, it's every time we come see you, it's the same,
Yeah.
I like it, but it's you should, you want to, but also you should want to.
Yeah.
Write
sure.
new stuff.
Yeah. And do you find, and we'll wrap up this section. I'm just so fascinated because you're talking, I love the process of it. So do you find that because this last special, it seems like you developed it during like COVID times, and you said theaters had started to open back up. Did you test any of the material on a Zoom audience, and was that different?
I did, I did kind of a newish hour on. I did one of those Zoom shows, like where I did a full hour, and it actually went okay, but I hated doing it. I did a couple Zoom shows where I did short sets, and those were shitty, just like all of them. But it's like it wasn't as bad as having to kind of do it. But it's like I was paid for that hour, so it's like okay, that's cool. And like when I did shows, I would try to do something where like once I was just dressed entirely in like 70s workout gear and I had another laptop and I was like, as they came in, I was like doing some routine.
Yes.
Like I'm teaching and I'm like, what do we have next? Comedy, right? So it was like,
I love it.
Okay. Like I did something. I remember I did Hot Tub once and I just read this. I had written this thing that was like the league of, oh God, sweaty wrestlemen, and it was like guys who like to wrestle in a pit where it's like I talk about how there's like they put 100 of us just in the ground and you have to wrestle your way out or something like that, and you can't wear anything but like shorts, one pair of shorts, and it was just me being angry because we're being shut down and I didn't understand why. I was so mad. I was like, okay, what's the most extreme thing? Because everybody was like, I don't want to wear a mask. I don't want to. I don't see the point. I should be able to go to movies. They should bring back college sports. Come on, just do it. I know it's not safe. Just do it. So I was like, what would be the most extreme? Okay, these guys are shirtless and fighting each other in a big pit, and it's just. And I talk about how the steam rises up, and but that's part of the ritual. And I was like, I'm just gonna read this, and you're gonna fucking listen. And I take my shirt off, and I'm getting all this stuff in the chat, and I click on it. And I remember Kyle Kinane was like, dude, put away your cheddar tits, and everyone's just like, put your tits away, and because Zoom had this thing where, or whatever streaming thing they had, this rule where no one could show their nipples, because it's like, if women do, it's pornographic, but then there's a cis-born guy who identifies as female now, and she or they take their shirt off. So it's this kind of, they're trying to navigate, but it just makes you realize how all of it and all of us are so stupid.
Yeah.
Like we're so dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. there are women with that don't have ample chests, but they still have breasts, and it's like, like these definitions that we have. There are clearly men with huge, bountiful bosoms.
Massive.
Like we all know that.
Yes,
massive. So like it was just the weirdest, and I was like, I never got that the memo about. I never. So it's like I think I finally like turned it so you could like whatever before I finished my thing, but. It was that spelled out how the weirdness of the era we were in.
Yeah, God bless. I know Jackie Cation, who's been on the show before, she talked about how she developed her most recent hour exclusively via Zoom. And I was just like, I don't know how you did. Like, how did you? Anyway.
I'm so impressed.
Me too. Me too. Because I was like, that feels like a dystopian nightmare, but well done.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, folks, we hope you enjoyed your apps. We're going to move on to the entrees after a quick break. We are back, and now it is time for the entrees. Okay, so this whole section, Matt, is everybody's favorite, and it's just like a bunch of questions. Feel free to tell stories, and some of it is counting, so take your time. So what was your first job ever, customer service job, where the government was taking taxes out? So some people have said like, oh, babysitting paper route, blah, blah, blah. But what's the first that for you?
My first official job that I just sucked at was, for some reason, some guy hired me to loosely manage a small apartment building in Portland when I was in high school.
High school?
Manage. I wasn't collecting rent. I would vacuum the halls and I would water the lawn and mow it. And the guy, I remember I was fine at cleaning the hallways, all that jazz, but like this guy bought this new sod. And I would water the crap out of it, and not too much watering, but like I wasn't a gardener. He was cutting corners, parts of the sod that the sun wasn't reaching was dying, and so I got fired within like 2 weeks. So I can't even count that. But probably my senior year of high school, I worked at Rose's Ice Cream on Northeast Fremont. It's now gone. But that was an awesome job because I had a bunch of friends who worked there. I did the smartest thing you can do, which is get really heavy the year before you go to college. It's always smart. I tell these kids, just fatten up.
There's no freshman 15.
for the beginning of your adult sexual independence. Just really have love handles. Get some nice beer flaps all around your belly and middle.
Listen, there's somebody to love you somewhere, but good Lord.
somewhere. Yeah. But it was horrendously unhealthy, but it was a great time.
Was it
a great time to work at ice cream.
Did you get beer flaps because you were working at Rose's Ice Cream? Was it you were just eating all the time?
Yeah, I mean, it was all like everything was like my neck swelled up. I just was like, even, I mean, you wouldn't look at pictures and go, look at that fatty, but it was just like, it's not, I mean, I was like that in my 30s as well too, but it was just because I would go in and for lunch, I would have like a cheeseburger and like clam strips and a milkshake. Like the archetypal worst meal, like almost every day. Well, because it was ice cream and a grill.
Oh, so forget it.
You can make anything. You can make anything you want, and the dude did not care. And so, like, it was there was an older woman who worked there, and she would take home like a quart of ice cream nightly, and it was just her and her boyfriend. I'm like, how much ice cream are you eating?
They're like, we have the strongest bones on the planet. Don't worry about us.
It's wild. Yeah, we're fine. We're fine. My heart is going to explode,
but our bones won't break.
Such good bones.
Okay, wait, I have to go back because you said you were fired from that first official job within 2 weeks. Was it because the sod wasn't growing? What was the reason?
Yes.
How's that your fault?
Well, it was also, I was being a, whatever I was, 15-year-old. I was biking around. I was hanging out with my friends. I'd be like, all right, I'll go buy the apartment. It's like, I would never at this point stand up in a court of law and be like, Your Honor, I was fired without
without cause,
any sort of reason. It's like, I'm sure, I honestly just don't remember. Okay. It's a blip. Like, it was over so fast.
Yeah.
I think he just realized, like, wait, what did I do? I never should have hired a kid. I need to spend some money, hire an actual gardener, that kind of thing.
He ain't wrong. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So Rose's Ice Cream. So you said that was senior year of high school was the first time that served for you?
It was.
Did you then go back to that during summers after college or during college?
No, I worked at summers off. I would go back to Portland and I worked at the Rock Bottom Brewery there that I worked every summer when I was in college. And then after college, I got a job at the one in Chicago and I was there for 6 years.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Good for you.
I just burped.
It's okay. It's loud.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So did you get moved up in the ranks or were you just like, look, I need a job that's going to be in another city?
When I was in college, I was an expediter. I was a food runner. Oof. I want to say, let's see. You know what? No. Let me go back. So summer before college, I was at Rose's. Summer between freshman and sophomore year, if I'm not mistaken, it was either freshman and sophomore freshman and sophomore year. I worked in a greeting card store at the mall. Yeah, and then after that, the subsequent summers, I was a food expediter and a runner at Rock Bottom, and then I was a waiter in Chicago.
I have to understand because I know that you have end up becoming a bartender. We'll get into all of that because you kept moving up.
Sure.
I have to understand how a greeting card job somewhere snuck its way in there because that feels like such a departure from what you were doing.
I didn't really care. I was like, all right, this is a summer job. You know what I mean? Like I applied and I got the gig and I just worked in this greeting card store and it was horrifically boring.
I bet.
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad. But that was just like one of those.
It just snuck its way in. Okay. Well, malls also working in the mall was also that sweet spot too of like your friends might also have a job at the mall, and so like even if you guys didn't have the same job, you could meet and screw around at lunch or whatever. So it was like hanging out. I get that.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay, so how many customer service jobs total? And I count comedy as a customer service job, but if we were to remove that, I mean, you can count that, but what would be the like total ballpark of customer service jobs you had?
Oh, wow. Okay, so just by, I'd say by title, so you got the ice cream scooper, occasional grill. You've got the greeting card store. You've got food runner, expediter. I'll count that as the same.
Yep.
Waiter, bartender, bartender for banquets, and also occasional banquet captain, where you would oversee like an event. Well, because Rock Bottom Chicago has a second level where they have an event space, like two different event spaces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's just like where your company can just have a little
Christmas party or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Or a post-wedding thing, or whatever you want. So
okay.
Yeah.
So you seem to stay kind of loyal as you got more into your like entertainment career. You're like, I'm just going to stick with this one job. So when you worked at Rock Bottom, was that it? Because most of us have to have multiple restaurant jobs. Was it enough to survive?
Yeah. It really was just me being in Chicago and them they had really good health benefits. And I was always conscious of that, where I had, it was one of those things, we were in the North Loop where if you've seen that show, The Bear, that's where it was. And Mr. Beef, where they shoot actually, is like 2 blocks away from Rock Bottom. And Rock Bottom's on State and Grand. And I think that is on Wells, I think. Anyway, so So basically, there were always restaurants popping up, like new places were popping up, and people would get like they'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna work there now, or I'm gonna go here." And I had friends who were like, "I'm making so much more money. It's such a cool restaurant," and I'm like, "Yeah, but what are your benefits?" And I always had that. I'm not a responsible person by definition.
To be clear.
Typically, I'm better than I ever have been. I will say that, but. I'm far more self-aware than I used to be. But that is one thing I always thought about was like, okay, if I get hit by a bus, and I have to go to the hospital for like a couple weeks, my parents will go bankrupt. Oh. That was how I thought of it. Not in terms of, I certainly didn't give a shit about my health back then.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. No way.
Yeah. You had neck flaps. We know. You're all right.
Yeah. Bars were open till 4. It was like,
rough.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, and also it it is like a really good company. Like they do hire really good people. Like I have some of my best friends I've ever met in my life that I used to work with. And there are people I used to work with, oh my God, all that time ago that still work there.
Really?
You know? They're like, yeah, like one's a manager. One left a couple of years ago and he opened his own place with his wife in, I think, Arizona. But there are people who like, I think at least one or two people that I work with still bartend there because it's like, it's just steady money.
Sure.
And they're doing better than they could do at any other job. And now they have kids and they're like,
yeah,
it works. It's a job. So
did it, because what often happens is, at least this has happened for me and other guests, is that you reach this point though where you're like, if I have to wait on one more effing table, I'm going to shoot myself in the face. So did you hit an apex of like that moment?
Yes.
So how'd you handle that?
The last year I was in Chicago, I had I had a relationship go kaput, and it turned out to be a good thing, but it's like, it just kind of like was like staring down the barrel of my 30s and just going like, well, if I'm going to, chase my dreams now, I have to, now's the time to jump ship. But I also was like, I was kind of phoning it in. I wasn't. People like picking up my slack and like, I got called on it. And I remember saying in a sales meeting, I was like, I'm really sorry that I've been this a-hole where I think, I didn't say it like this, but, at the time I thought like, this is so beneath me. I've been doing this too long. Sure. But it's like, the job still needs to get done. Why am I cleaning up your section? Kind of stuff.
Sure.
So like, that was definitely an indicator. But then I came to LA and it's like, well, I'm still going to do it if I can. And so because that's all I know, as a worker. And so I got a job with, I got hired at a fancy place in Santa Monica, and they fired me after a week. Nothing I did. They just were like, they actually overhired. I was like, okay, great.
Whatever.
But I over those days, I was like, I don't even know if I can hack it. Like fine dining is crazy. It's crazy. And I'd come from like an Applebee's that makes their own beer. Like that's what really what rock bottom is. And God bless them. I still love that company. I still love, like, they were so good to me, and like, there's a reason I stayed there.
Sure.
All that time. But so then I worked for an event company. So I would just put in my avails, and it'd be like, I'd go bartend in somebody's house, or I would go at various events. Same kind of thing when I was working banquets in Chicago. And then I got a job as a PA because my friend was doing that. And I did that for 2 years for a production and it was brutal, but here's the thing, that job and the next job let me get to do what I do now, because the guy who was supervisor would be like, I have an audition. He'll be like, I'll send you on a run, and we'll put it down as, yeah. So I would come back and I would bust my ass. I'd do stuff you're not supposed to do in that job, like move furniture and, crazy stuff and drive trucks I wasn't licensed to drive, stuff like that. So it's like, I definitely put in my work. But then the last job I ever had, it wasn't service, but I was a closed captioner for the hearing impaired. My mother's an English professor. Grammar is something I can always nail. And so like I basically, it's a lot like editing. It's just stop, start, stop, start. It was just, pre-provided stuff, not live. Never. I was not the live captioner. And that was a job where, because you'd go project to project, and they're like, this thing has to be, it's like this latest episode of like The Office or America's Top Model or whatever. It's like, we have to have this done by Tuesday. And you're like, all right. And you'd work on it and be like, hey, I have this audition. And they'd be like, okay, well, you got to come back in the weekend. I'd be like, cool. All right, I'll come back in for 3 hours.
What a gift.
So it was like, it was a godsend, absolute godsend. And like, it was nice to just have, it was an 8 to 4. It wasn't a 9 to 5, but it was like, just to have that, because then I had nights I could go do stand up.
Yeah.
And, I had a brief dalliance with looking at becoming a copywriter. I went to Leo Burnett, and I interviewed there in Chicago, a massive advertising firm. And they really liked me, and they wanted me to submit a portfolio. But everyone I talked to who did that were like, this is it, though. This takes all of your creativity. you're not going to do stand up. And I was just like, well, then no. You know, I know me. I know I'll get comfortable and I'll convince myself it's enough. And after a few years, I'll go, what did I do?
Yeah.
You know, and then I have to start from zero again. So
it sounds like you have a really good energy around you, but it sounds like you also have attracted a lot of people that are looking out for you in ways that you wouldn't have known at the time were massive. Like that guy when you were a PA being like, okay, I'll send you on a run. It's like people don't, it's what keeps artists being able to art in a city like LA where it's like, we don't get grants to just sit around and audition. Like we do have to have something to sustain us. So when people recognize that what you're doing isn't exactly goals, but you're still gonna work your ass off, but it's not goals, and they help you with that stuff, I'll stay loyal till I'm bloody. If you can allow me to audition, like that's such a gift.
Well, it's also like, not that I don't want to say, everyone's rooting for each other, but we're rooting for each other more than most people admit.
That's an interesting point. Why do you say that?
Well, because it's like the archetype is like, we're all against each other. We're all out for ourselves. That's absolutely true. All we think about is ourselves. Yes, that's 100%. But like, put it this way, like when I'm on stage when you're on stage doing comedy, the whole crowd is like, I hope this person does well.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Where, you know, it's another thing if there's someone in your life who is like, I want to be the best ventriloquist ever, but they're terrible. And you're like, please stop. You know? And I remember captioning like a celebration of this, the improv theater, Improv Olympic or IO I came out of in Chicago. I was only there for like a couple of years before, or 2 years before I just did full tilt stand up because I got kicked off my improv team. But that's because, well, I did levels 1 through 5 with Del Close, who basically invented improv, and then he died months later. They added level 6, and I'm like, I don't have time or the money. And they were like, well, you got to take it if you stay on your improv team. And I was like, all right, bye.
See ya.
So
yeah,
exactly. So, but I remember being at at Caption Max, the caption company, and they did this special about that, at that thing, and it had all these famous people, and I was around the same era of like Jason Sudeikis, and he was in it, and I remember, and I did improv with him like once, and he pimped me, that fuck, but and if people don't know what that is, that is, I'll tell you what he did. I was sitting in with his improv team. His improv team was exceptional.
They were so good.
I was friends with the guy who was on there, and like he had me, and he walks up to me, it's just me and him, and he's like, so how's that golf club feel for you? I'm like, it's got a good swing, I like the grip, but he's like, you're not holding a golf club. And now I gotta be insane. Now I have to be,
that's shitty.
He pulled the rug out. I don't know if he liked me or something. I don't know why. But he just did that to me. And so now I have to be a crazy person who doesn't know what's holding his hand or nothing. But that's beside the point. My point is I'm capturing this thing with all these people, and I'm just like, I should have stayed at this theater. I should have just kept doing this. I should have stayed doing improv. I'm captioning stuff. But I remember saying that offhandedly to my supervisor, and she was like, oh, but you can't look at life that way. And it was like this I was like, oh my God, you're totally, like, she just totally, yeah. She was so sweet, you know, and she was almost like Pam from The Office, who was always putting herself aside, where I remember we all went out to dinner. This company took us all out to dinner for Christmas every year, and they were going to drinks, and she's like, I'll have a martini, and the waiter's like, apple martini, and she's like, okay. And I'm like, no, that's not what you want. And she's like, no, I don't. But she just didn't want to make anyone else wait or like, she was that sweet.
Wow.
So for her to say that, I was like, oh man, like you just made my day. You made me realize, oh yeah, there's a billion people who came to that theater and stayed with it. And
now what?
You know, they're not in this special.
Yeah.
And by the way, this special no one will ever see. You know, I don't even know what network it was on, whatever, but you get in your head when you think, oh yeah, I'm, what happened to me? What am I doing here? But it's like, yeah, like, you know, it was really cool that she would let me go audition and stuff, but like, and it's also like, I think of that company, I think of Rock Bottom, and I'm just grateful. They were so awesome. And in both cases, really good health benefits.
Shit. I mean, it matters. It matters.
Oh my God.
So now I know that there's a rock bottom in LA. So why not make the transition? Or maybe it didn't exist before. Like, why not?
I don't think it existed. I think I also was like, it's time to get off that train.
Okay.
I can't work for this company. I will say I had to, when I did, I went back to Portland, and then when I left Chicago and worked at the one in Portland for about a summer for about 4 months before I left. So I did a little bit post Chicago, but not much. But they were cool enough to be like, oh, I pick up some shifts.
I mean,
it was nice.
You have a lot of people that really were rooting for you to stay in comedy. I mean, it's like the universe was like, you don't get a choice. Like, you have to do this.
I'm very, very, very grateful.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's wild you put it that way, because I remember my first TV set I ever did was live at Gotham, and I didn't realize I was in the makeup chair, but I just started getting so nervous.
Oh.
Where I was like, because it's like I'm only doing 7 minutes. 7 minutes. You're just like, how? And I went out there and I start just like talking way too fast, and I could see people's faces going like, and then there was a rainstorm that night. The power went out during my set, and I just went, whoa, it was a blackout. They're like, all right, everyone, stay where you are. And all right, we got a generator, lights up. All right, everyone, pretend you haven't heard anything Matt said.
Oh my God, what a gift. You got to start over.
It was beyond a gift. And I got into it again. I'm like, all right, I'm relaxed. We're all laughing at the situation. I'm realizing I'm making it a bigger deal than it is. And I had a bit about how dehumanizing being a character actor can be in like commercials. Because this happened to me. I went to an audition, and there was a very pretty girl with the clipboard, and I'm like, hey, I'm here it was like one of my early, I had not been in a lot of auditions. It's like, oh boy, an audition, here we go. And I was like, can you tell me what I'm here for? She's like, what's your name? And I was like, Matt Braunger. She goes, yeah, you're here for the role of unattractive man.
Oh my God.
In my face. And that's the joke. And and how it just crushes your soul, like just your face and body. And so when it was just a joke about, it was at this point the Republicans were trying to throw Social Security out the window and or make it privatized, and AARP was making these ads where a guy is hitting on a woman again and again and again at a gym where she's trying to work out, and it was like, a bad idea is just a bad idea. That was the tagline, And so it's like, you can cast any guy for unattractive man. It's just, she just doesn't want to fuck him. That's all it is. So, but I didn't realize it at the time. But so I'm on stage doing that live at Gotham thing, and I remember and I go in there, and she said it was for the role of, and the lights went out again. And in the darkness, I went, Dracula, and it got a laugh in the darkness. And I was like, I said into the mic, none of this matters. And then I got another laugh. And then Daniel Tosh was hosting it. And if you've ever met Daniel, he is, if he finds out that you're a comedian, he is a peach. He's the nicest guy in the world. Everybody else, he's kind of a dick. And I say that with love. That guy has always been good to me. And, he's very nice to, I would say, service people, like waiters and bartenders, things like that. Not, he doesn't even drink, but I just remember him backstage going off on the producer, in the guys, because of what happened to me. And he's like, and the guy's like, we're trying to fix it. He's like, don't try, fucking fix it. And I remember him yelling, I'm not worried about Braunger. He's going to roll with whatever happens. But there's an act that had a musical portion. He's like, what are you going to do when the lights go out for? And he says that comic's name, kind of thing, where it's like, he got so mad for us kind of thing that it was like, it was pretty wild. It was a crazy night. It was one of those things, when it was over, I was just like, I got up there, freaked out, and then got it restored, and then ended it, but it felt like, oh, I made it out alive. It was like being, can I just go in the next room and drink until I can't stand. Like, this is bananas.
And that was your first time doing stand-up on television?
Yeah, if memory serves, that would have been early 2008. And I did, then at the end of the year, I was the last guest on Letterman.
Holy shit. I mean, but see, I would frame that again. It's like, even though, okay, you couldn't have, like, a rainstorm, obviously, act of God, can't worry about that. And the power going off and whatever. But, like, the power went off so you could start over and, like, have the best set of your life on TV.
Seriously.
Like, the universe is conspiring to make you do comedy. It just keeps happening.
Well, and it's like, I've since then I've done sets on TV that I did Craig Ferguson, and I can't watch that set. I hate it. Because I think it was like all the jokes are kind of half-baked. It's okay, but it's like, I don't even know if you can find it, so it doesn't even matter. But that said, I've had a lot of people. I've had people that have definitely tried to impede. You just definitely have that, where it's just like, well, I'll be helped if I kind of screw you over here, kind of thing. It'll help me. But that's
we all have it. We all have it.
Always. Yeah. So it hasn't. These has all been like, fun, uplifting stories, and I have more of those than the bad ones, but like some of the bad ones I have, and I won't get into it because it's depressing, but like, and I just go, oh my God.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, I guess the good with the bad, but it just, the stories that you've presented, I'm like, it's lovely that you have enough people around you that were like, at least you had enough of the product.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So, okay, what was your favorite job of all of the customer service jobs you've listed? Obviously we know comedy's your favorite, but like that doesn't get to count in this.
No, I think just being a waiter in Chicago was it, because it was a friend of mine who I would riff with, and we wrote a show that we put on at one of the Second City theaters in Chicago that we developed just by talking about, like, just riffing up things. And like, he had a great point. He's like, I wish life was like when you're waiting tables, where you could just break off in the middle of a story without explanation and walk away.
Yeah.
Because we do that.
We do all the time.
Say goodbye. Totally.
Yeah.
More than understood, more than forgiven.
Yep. Yep.
And also, just having this incredible degree of people who are chill around each other.
Yes.
Like some of us for sure have hooked up, or there's one or two that don't like each other. My what I'll call my Chicago girlfriend and we met there and we dated for 3 years. I remember the same guy I'm talking about. His name is Kevin McGeehan. Very funny guy.
Oh my gosh, he will be a guest on this show in a few weeks. I love Kevin.
I love Magoo.
I couldn't figure out why Rock Bottom Brewery kept sticking out to me. I interviewed him a handful of weeks ago. I'm like, why does that remember? Got it. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah,
so Kevin,
that's where we met. And he had me sit in with his improv group that had Jason Sudeikis. That's where that was.
I was like, I swear I've heard some of these stories. I'm like, am I crazy?
Yes, totally.
That's why. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. And so Kevin and I, this is how like one thing I wish they would say when it comes to any sort of sexual harassment seminar is
leave improv out of it.
I wish, well, for sure, I would add that. But what I was going to say is listen to just the men here. If you're wondering, women can always tell your intent. They can always tell if you're going for it and if you would. So just know that and walk around knowing that. So here's a great example. Kevin and I, in June of 1999, we just started asking like women we worked with that we knew if they'd like a Millennium Baby, and B, if they want one, you can either pick me or Kevin, and just let us know by the end of the day. It's no big deal. And these are not. My girlfriend is working there. I'm obviously not asking her, but he can ask her. She's like, yeah, Kevin.
Obviously.
Obviously, but like. We would never have done that if it was like, and we're very conscious of, you don't really hit on each other. Sometimes people are drunk at parties and things just happen, whatever. But that didn't go on because of the petri dish we're all in, that we have to survive in.
Yes.
So every one of them, without batting an eye, would go, I'm gonna go Matt, I'm gonna go Kevin, And it was stuff based on like our height or our hair.
Sure.
Like I want my kid, I already have really light hair. Matt has darker hair, whatever. And then this is the reason why I bring up the sexual harassment thing. There's this guy who worked there who was married to a girl who worked there, and he was always intense. He was like, well, I don't know if that's true. Like one of those guys where you're like, okay. And so he decided, he's like, you can pick me. Hey. And every girl's like, hey man, can you not? Like really, and because you could tell he wasn't that happy in his marriage, and they had a kid, and he really wanted to hook up with someone else. Like it was very obvious, where I really feel like Kevin and I basically were gay to all these women.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
You were non-threatening.
Like there was no,
yeah.
So it was just like, they'd just be like it was just a way for them, oh, good, I don't have to think about work right now. I get to choose
1,000%.
a father of my child. No offense, Kevin's in way better shape. Like, I get it. Yeah, so it was like, that was the and just having that kind of environment to, like, back the first couple of years when it was really fun. And I was like 23, 24, 25, and you're doing your little stuff, but there wasn't that thing of, oh boy, I hope I make it, because what is it to make it?
Sure.
It wasn't until I got in like a comedy festival and I got a little bit of attention, and not that it became less fun, but it was kind of like, you look back on those days where you're broke, but you're happy, and go, those were really the salad days of being stupid. Like, I've never been happier than I am right now overall, but those days of just being a young idiot, which I think is important,
Yeah,
very cool.
A lot of celebrities talk about that period, and people like roll their eyes and say like, okay, yeah, you really want to go back to a studio apartment with 3 people, like, okay, you're full of shit. But then you actually listen to them on enough interviews and you're like, oh yeah, but they could like go to the grocery store and it was no big deal, and they could like live their lives in a different way, and they could be idiots. And so there is a piece of that where you're like, oh, I get it.
I was listening today to Scarlett Johansson on Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, and like, she's so famous. She's like, beyond. And I remember seeing her, God, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, at a little restaurant, a little like sandwich shop, and she had this massive dude with her who's obviously security. And they're both having sandwiches. And I remember and she had a hood up, and my thought was, she's so little, and like, it's got to be so hard to, and I'm sure she's adjusted well to it, but it's like, when you say like, oh, when people are like, it's like, I don't think celebrity necessarily is something to be jealous of. We think it is, but it really isn't. I don't want that kind of attention. And scrutiny, and I don't need it. I had a weird set on Saturday. Friday, I had to throw 2 dudes out, and I never have to do that. And the club I was at, it's called Laugh Camp. They are in St. Paul. They're very small. They're barely holding on. You can tell they don't have. Well, they're not barely. They don't need security. But these 2 dudes in their 50s would not shut up. And I snuffed them out as much as I could, and I finally just went, "You guys gotta go." And this is the Midwest. People like their drinks, they like their good times. So people were screaming at these 2 guys. One guy stood up and was yelling at it, like a little 20-something alpha surfer type dude is like, "I'm gonna fuck you up," like yelling at those guys. It's all in the darkness, and I'm like, "You guys gotta go." And the bartender finally taps him to get out, and everybody was like, "Oh, you handled that so well." And I was like, "Oh, thanks," But like, I didn't really let it wash over me enough. So when I did the first show the next night, I kept missing beats in my act, and I kept screwing up jokes. And I remember saying to the audience, like, "Sorry, I'm dealing with a thing. Well, we're gonna get through this." And I finally got some stuff out, and I won them back. But it was like, I think about that set, it was days ago, almost every minute since I've gotten back, and I'm just like, I feel shame, and I feel anger, and I feel like, listen, don't feel bad for me or anything, but it's just like, I'm just sharing this with you to let you know, like, that was 1 hour of my life, and people wrote me, like I had someone write me on Twitter like, hey man, are you okay? About it. It's one of those things where, but if that messes me up, think if someone started a rumor and I looked at the National Enquirer and it was like, something about like, I don't know what, I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
When like something like that bounces out of my control, it's hard enough on me. I think what I'm saying is I'm too sensitive to be a movie star. I think that's what I'm saying to you right now.
And that's the reason you're not, is your sensitivity. They interviewed you and they were
that's
like,
the only
that's
reason.
It. That's the only reason. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
We've chosen it. We've chosen, and good for us. Like, we're heroes.
I'm dying to be cast in one of those giant movies in a huge role just to make people go, who the fuck is that? Who's that?
Well, I had a friend who transitioned from like, she was kind of like riding that middle to now she's doing very, very well. And she said, like, she's like looking back at the top of the mountain. She goes, once you get there, you're kind of like similar to what you had said about like, once you check the box of the thing that you always wanted, if you get the thing you've always wanted and you don't have a goal beyond the goal, there's a prison in that too of like, well, now your goals, other people are deciding. They're like, now you're doing this, now you're doing this, now you're doing this. And you're like, wait, I had autonomy on the hustle and the ride up. And now I don't have any autonomy. And now I'm like, oh, fuck, no. I don't like, I want to make a choice and I can't. And anyway.
Yeah.
Chaos.
That's wild.
We've talked ourselves out of being A-list movie stars. Good job, us. Okay. So did you answer which was the favorite? Did you say what the favorite job was?
Waitering.
Waitering just in general in Chicago. So not specifically Rock Bottom, just in general.
But at that time, I said, I'll say that. And I will say there are people listening who are like, but why didn't you like bartending more? And I always say, because when you're a waiter, you can walk away.
I just was saying, because as a bartender, you're in prison. You have to talk to everybody. Yes. You have to ask to pee.
My wife doesn't understand me. Really?
Here we go.
Go on.
Go off, buddy. Go off. Okay.
When you're a waiter, you're like, I got to get the cake for this kid's birthday.
I gotta.
I'm sorry about your wife and how she doesn't listen, but
I'm not gonna listen either. Okay.
Nope.
Was your least favorite then bartending? Would you say, or what was your least favorite?
Least favorite was